Are you interested in data science, but you're not sure you're cut out to be a data scientist? Well, watch and learn as we talk about the 5 major roles involved in data science, and we can discover which ones might be a good fit for you, your interests, and your skills. Hi, I'm Matt Eland, and I'm a software engineering instructor by day and data scientist by night. Now, I've been learning a lot about data science, and I want to share with you what I've learned. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the 5 major roles that you'll see in a data science world. When you think about data science, the first role that comes to mind is that of the data scientist. It makes sense. It's in the name. The data scientist is somebody who's responsible for setting up and creating your machine learning experiments. And then taking those experiments and sort of wrapping them in a bow and deploying them to a place where the rest of the business can use them. So being able to really operationalize them so other people can invoke that, get some information from those experiments, and really derive value for your business through that. Now, the day-to-day data scientist's role involves taking a set of data, analyzing that data through statistical analysis, exploratory data analysis, cleaning that data, making sure that data is in a state where you can actually work with it, where it's reliable, where you don't have missing values everywhere, and maybe doing some feature engineering, feature selection that's going to help your machine learning algorithms out. Data scientists are also responsible for selecting which machine learning algorithm to use and to evaluate various ones against each other for performance to find out which one's the most accurate for the task that you're trying to achieve. And that in of itself is more difficult than it sounds. So in order to be a data scientist, first of all, you need to have a very analytical and methodological approach to life. But secondly, you're going to need some skills. You're going to need some pretty solid statistical skills because you're doing some statistical analysis on things. You're working with p-values and standard deviation, things like that. You need to have a fairly good statistical understanding. Additional skills in calculus, linear algebra will help, but they're not as critical as statistics. Python or R, you're going to be doing some programming in the data scientist role. You're not going to be building large applications likely, but you're going to be writing some code, and that's okay. So you need to be comfortable working with the various types of libraries that you have available to you in your languages of choice. Python and R are both lovely languages and capable of doing the job. But you also need to be familiar maybe with APIs and deploying things and the basics of that. So that's the role of a data scientist, really taking a look at these experiments, setting them up, evaluating them for success, monitoring them for data drift and bias as time goes on. That's your data scientist. Okay, so number 2, we have our data analysts. And data analysts are responsible for taking raw data and converting them into insights that they can communicate with the organization. Yeah, I know that sounds a little bit marketing buzz speak to me too, but that's really what they do. They take that data, they are going to perform some exploratory data analysis, some statistical analysis perhaps. They're going to clean that data, make sure it's in a usable form, and they're going to look for trends. They're going to look for relationships, correlations, things like that. And once they spot these trends, they're going to find ways of visualizing them, either in a kind of a static visualization like a chart, or something more interactive like a dashboard, or potentially using something really advanced like a D3JS JavaScript interactive visualization where somebody can go in there and adjust little knobs and sliders and just play with the data, just like the data analyst could. Data analysts are really responsible for finding those insights, understanding what the data represents, and finding creative ways to communicate it to other people so that they can understand that data too and make decisions based on it. So your data analysts have to have a very analytical mindset. They have to have some understanding of statistics. They have to be able to communicate with the things that they found. So they got to be able to talk to your business stakeholders. You got to be able to talk to everybody in your organization and really understand the data that you're working with. Because if you don't understand the data, then you're not going to be able to make good insights out of them. You're going to have some specialized skills with whatever tools that your organization is using, whether that's Tableau or Power BI, Excel, Google Sheets, Python. There's plenty of different ways that you can analyze data. So you're probably going to have some decent spreadsheet skills, maybe a little bit of programming, probably some SQL, so you can actually query data and get that data yourself without having to bug a database administrator or somebody like that. But you're really going to need a lot of domain knowledge, and that's knowledge over the data and the business problems that you're trying to solve. But data analysts are a very interesting and exciting field, especially if you're good at communication and if you think very visually and can communicate in that format. All right, up next we have our data engineers. Data engineers are really the backbone of your data organization. They're going to be living in a larger organization, and they're going to really exist to sort of help your data scientists and data analysts and application developers have what they need to do their job. So their job is really to set up the data pipelines that everybody else relies on. They're responsible for taking a lot of different sources of data and getting it into a centralized area that your data scientists and data analysts and other stakeholders can look at that and analyze and feed to machine learning experiments and make informed decisions off of that. So your data engineers are going to be writing some pipelines, some transformational pipelines. They're going to be writing in programming code in whatever language you're working with. And they're going to be taking that data and basically doing an ETL or ELT operation to really extract it and load it into a database where it can be used. So that's sort of the role of a data engineer. It's a programming heavier role compared to some of these other ones, though data scientist is fairly programming heavy as well. But their skills are more oriented towards data and databases and connecting various departments and parts of your organization, various applications to the centralized areas of your data. So you're going to have that programming knowledge, you're going to have that SQL knowledge the same way that we would have with a data analyst, but probably a lot more so. You're going to have a pretty deep and diverse knowledge of different types of databases, because you're not just working primarily with a relational database, you're going to be working with data lakes and data warehouses, possibly streaming data, things like that. So you're really going to have to dip your toe into all the different parts of your organization and the types of data that your organization works with. If that sounds exciting to you and not that intimidating, then data engineering might be your thing. If you'd rather work more on the front lines and see the value come out of the data, that might be something that you might want to look more at the data analyst or data scientist kind of roles. But data engineers are really important for a larger organization that has a lot of data, because you need that data to be reliable and in a clean slate and available for the people who are trying to use it. All right, number 4 on my list. This is probably my most controversial choice. I don't see this on a whole lot of other lists, but I wanted to include it because I think it's important. It's the role of an AI engineer, artificial intelligence engineer. And this is a role I first saw in Microsoft's roles-based certifications. But an AI engineer is responsible really for taking in your machine learning solutions and building things with them. So they are building chatbots, they're building intelligent search, they're building digital assistants, they're building computer vision solutions. All of these things that can really rely on the machine learning solutions built by your data scientists. They can take these and kind of turn the notch up a little bit more. They can really turn these things into applications, deliver the value through there. So your AI engineers are really dealing with a whole lot of these previously developed by your organization machine learning models, or they're using something like Azure Cognitive Services and taking advantage of pre-built models that are out there on the internet. So Azure Cognitive Service, for those who are not familiar, I have another video talking about it, but it's essentially being able to use pre-canned services like computer vision, speech recognition, speech synthesis, text analysis, things like that. So you're really incorporating a whole lot of existing machine learning solutions to deliver specific value to your users, whether that's through chat or search or some other applications. You're basically taking these things and just running with them. So this is a programming heavy role. You're going to need some programming competency in whatever language your organization is using, but you also need to be able to understand the data that your organization is using, and the machine learning routines that you're relying on, whether they're from your organization or from somewhere else outside of your organization. So you need to have that wide range of knowledge, and you need to probably have a decent degree of really creativity in applying these things. I would say you also need to be decent at communication as well, because anytime you're dealing with machine learning solutions, you're dealing with certain limitations that are maybe might not be there for traditional software, and being able to communicate those clearly to business stakeholders and to end users is important, because AI solutions do have their limitations, and it's important and ethical to communicate those to others involved who may not be as technical and may not understand these things. So that's the role of an AI engineer. So finally, we have our database administrator. That's our fifth role. So database administrators are a more traditional role. They're not usually associated with data science specifically, but they're usually in organizations that do data science. And a database administrator, or DBA for short, is responsible for the ongoing maintenance, performance tuning, security, and backup of the databases in that organization. So a DBA is going to be somebody who's going to pay really close attention to your databases and just kind of tune them and tweak them and make sure they're really humming along, performing well. They may do the performance tuning themselves, or they may coach developers on, hey, this query you wrote isn't very good. You should really be using this instead. They're also primarily responsible for security and making sure that privacy and backups and appropriate levels of security are given to the appropriate types of users. So they're going to have a decent degree of skill in the databases that your organization is working with. They're going to be pretty much experts in those areas and getting deeper and deeper in their knowledge of those things. They're also going to have a decent degree of networking knowledge because you need that when you're really administrating a database. But they're going to have some broad knowledge as well of the various things that consume that data and interact with that data, the various parts of the organization. But primarily their focus is on a database, making sure that the databases are performing well, that they are secure, that they can recover if there's some sort of a catastrophic issue, things like that. So that's for the role of the DBA. All right, so we have our 5 major roles in data science. We got our data scientists, our data analysts, our data engineers, our AI engineers, and our database administrators, or DBAs. So those are our 5. So which one of these is right for you? Well, that's up to you to decide. But I have a few things here to help you out. So first of all, I have a nice little table that has all of our roles and all the common skills that they have. Now, these are more like guidelines as to which ones are more important and less important. For example, some organizations may have a data analyst role that is very programming heavy, while others may have a data analyst role that does no programming whatsoever. And it may vary based on your background and experience as well. So take a look at that. Hopefully that's helpful. The other thing I have for you is a little flowchart, and this flowchart can be handled with a series of questions. So first of all, do you want to work with machine learning? You want to be in data science, sure, but do you want to work with machine learning? If you do, you're probably an AI engineer or a data scientist. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to be the one building and training the machine learning routines? If that's you, then yeah, you want to look into data science and data scientist as your role. Now, if you'd rather take those machine learning algorithms and consume them, use them to build an application, you should check out AI engineer, because that's what that's all about. Now, if you're less interested in the machine learning aspects of it and more in the whole data ecosystem and building out a larger organization that can do these things, or supporting your organization, you have to ask yourself first, well, am I really fascinated by finding insights in the data and being able to communicate those to others? If you are, that's a data analyst. Go check it out. It's awesome. But if you're more on the supporting side of things, you now have a choice. Do you want to be responsible for connecting a lot of little sources of data into one larger place and making sure that works efficiently? Or would you rather focus on a few key databases and making sure that they are working reliably and at load and at performance, and that if they go offline, you can quickly recover them? If it's the former, you want to be a data engineer, connect all these little things together. If it's the latter and you really want to focus on a few key databases, well, that's a database administrator. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this helps you understand maybe some options available to you. I'm going to be talking about all of these things in more detail, so please like and subscribe so YouTube will recommend more of these videos to you in the future as I make them. And let me know what you think in the comments, what you're most interested about. Thanks for watching, and happy coding.